I'm Senior Sales Consultant here at Higher Echelon. I'm joined today by Rick Penny, formerly of Phillips Healthcare. Rick is one of our case study examples that we're going to walk through today, and he's going to share a little bit of the story as far as what happened with his organization and how he and Higher Echelon worked together to kind of really create a better environment for everybody. Rick, maybe I could ask you to just kind of introduce yourself to the teams here.
Yeah, Rob, sure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Higher Echelon as well. So I'm Rick Penny. I led our strategic business group for Phillips Healthcare for about 8 years. Also led an interim role as the sales excellence leader, which included all of the sales ops, sales training, all of the execution phases as what was needed to put together a strategic partnership for our top healthcare customers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Rick, why don't we go ahead and jump on into it? Why don't you just do us a favor here and set the stage? What was going on with Phillips? How far back? We're looking at 12, 18 months to kind of really get where everybody was heading and kind of where that ultimately brought Higher Echelon into the equation.
Yeah, Rob, I think if we go back about 18 months prior to the engagement of Higher Echelon, Phillips was going through a lot of organizational change. And as most big companies have, as things change, organizations need to pivot and change as well. This was a pretty seismic shift for Phillips. It was a plan laid out by our CEO, very transparent about what was going to take place over the next 12 to 18 months, including some reductions in force, movement, and an organizational change on where people would be reporting, how the businesses were organized. So pretty impactful for everybody. Also knowing that not everything was going to be known up front. There was going to be information that was going to be disclosed as we went forward. And frankly, we didn't have all the answers up front. So that was encouraging to know that the organization was trying to be as transparent as they could at that time. But as you can imagine, that created a lot of stress and a lot of strains on the organization. People didn't know if they're going to have the same job, the same boss, if their role was even going to exist in this new organization. So that was really the underlying issue that brought us to Higher Echelon.
Okay, perfect. Was there anything in particular with regards to the Higher Echelon services as you were going through that really jumped out that you said, I think this really is a better fit?
Yeah, absolutely. Higher Echelon was known to Phillips. In fact, the person that was head of our North American training organization had worked with them previously and was currently working with them. He recommended, given everything we were going through, that we engage them and help us go through some change management opportunities. Especially with our organization was probably more impacted than others because we touched so many different elements. Not only their roles potentially were in flux, but all of the people they were connected with and served on a daily basis were changing. So they're hearing it from both sides, and thought it would be helpful for us to bring in this third party to help us navigate through that.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks for kind of setting the stage and kind of letting everybody know all the different pieces that were going on. That's a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely.
So I know there was two kind of key themes. We saw a lot of things you'd mentioned around change management, and then also some areas that we want to drill into around managing stress. So let's take a look at the first one, if we could. With regards to change management, what tools resonated with the team with regards to change management that Higher Echelon was bringing in to kind of help folks navigate that scenario that you kind of talked about previously?
I think what was very helpful from my standpoint with the Higher Echelon is they took the time to really understand what was happening, what was the dynamic at Phillips. So they spent time interviewing myself, my leadership team, well in advance of engaging the team directly. So they really wanted to understand our current state, where we were hoping to go, and what some of the underlying issues were. Also getting familiar with our nomenclature. It's interesting to bring in a third party. If they don't understand the Phillips vocabulary, then they're going to miss some of the nuanced pieces of what's really holding people back or preventing them from moving forward through the change curve. So I think the time they spent up front was very, very helpful, Rob.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. What was the response from the teams with these sessions?
Very positive. We broke it into 4 or 5 different sessions. We kind of organized it by sub-teams, invited them to these calls, um, had them participate in some homework to really understand what the baseline was. Really, and then rolling up our sleeves and getting to the details of why change is difficult, understanding that if you may have heard that your colleague's job has gone away, but you still have your job, that survival guilt that comes with that. Also, the ambiguity we had, knowing that there were more changes coming over the next 18 months. So they felt like it was a safe place to have that dialogue. I think it was also helpful that we had people that would engage and answer pretty openly about it. We also had people that would sit and listen, which is great. But we also wanted to hear from them. So I think the Higher Echelon team did a great job of helping those people feel comfortable to engage at their own pace.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. How is this different than things that your teams had gone through in the past?
What was different about this is that we've had change management initiatives internally before, and we've even worked on within our teams. We were working with some top customers and helping them navigate change management as we may be deploying a new partnership. So we had some experience, core competency, if you will, of change management process. But what's valuable here is this was a true third party coming in and helping us understand this better. So it was a safe venue. It wasn't like people felt like someone from HR was concerns pop up. So I think I think it was great having that third party sounding board for people.
Okay, great. Perfect. As we've continued to see, I think the theme is that's a lot of moving parts that your teams have had to kind of manage through and kind of have them keep functioning and kind of driving forward despite all those other aspects that were happening in the environment there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So clearly that brings up another topic, as we mentioned before, which is managing stress. So, and you've said that quite frankly, that just goes hand in hand with change management. So maybe, how did the team resonate in talking about stress? Did that come out during those sessions, or how was that? How did that occur?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was important about the stress factor is, change management. As you're going through a change at work, it has a ripple effect throughout all aspects of your life, your personal life, your professional life, family life, whatever it might be. So it's not the only stress you're dealing with, it's just additive. So I think it was important to recognize that, and that was brought up in our initial change management discussions. So part of the follow-up recommendations from Donnie and the team at Higher Echelon was to look at potentially offering some sessions to talk about the focus on the employee and how do they manage their stress. Completely voluntary. Again, we set up several call-in sessions for them to participate in, but again, on a voluntary basis. This was offered as just an open session, so different groups from different sub-teams could join together independently, which also was helpful because you were getting a different perspective at that time as well. So I think the value in that was that you really quickly understanding that stressors in life are additive, and it's having that awareness around those is very helpful.
Rick, I know you don't want to take attendance during these, but did you get a sense as far as how many folks were taking advantage of those sessions?
Yeah, I think it was very high participation rate. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I north of 80% of the people on the teams took advantage of it. At least one session. Some actually maybe attended others because they wanted to hear comments from their colleagues, and just hearing a different potential spin to it. And I think it was understanding that not all stress is bad too. Sometimes stress can be good for you. It's just being aware of it and making sure you're managing it the right way.
Okay, helpful. 80% for a voluntary session is almost unheard of. I'd say some folks where it's a mandatory session, getting 80% can be is almost considered a good number. So that's impressive.
I
So
think that speaks to two things. One, I think it speaks to the quality of the work that the Higher Echelon team did, but also speaks to the urgency that people had around this and that this was
mm,
top of mind. And I think the feedback after the sessions, you may be getting to this question or not, but the feedback after the sessions was phenomenal, especially on the change management. The initial session, people were very appreciative of the that Phillips was willing to take the time to invest in them and listen to them and make sure they had a place to talk about the change and to understand how they're and understand from their colleagues how they were feeling about it as well.
okay, all right. Maybe we also just kind of let's maybe just to kind of help folks understand how these sessions are run.
Mm-hmm.
What did you see from regards? You've touched base with it with some of the a little bit earlier
Yeah.
with the facilitation of the session, because these are some sensitive topics, and quite frankly, given that environment, you're not always getting in a very heavy share moment
Mm-hmm.
with organizations and people. So I'm just kind of curious how the facilitation was able to navigate through some of those waters.
Yeah, the facilitators did a good job of just being patient with people. I think we also set aside the right amount of time. I think it was about a 2.5 hour session with
Mhm.
breaks. So it broke it up a little bit. Um, they provided some homework. So asked people to answer some questions, key questions that they reviewed kind of um, in a way that was non-disclosure, didn't really say whose comment was who,
Right.
but it helped spur dialogue. You know, XYZ said this about the change or concern about the change, and people would comment on that or echo it. And then, ultimately, as we're going along, if they hadn't heard from someone, they would call them out and just say, "Hey, Susie, is there anything you'd like to add to this? Is there anything different that you may have than what we've heard today?" So I think it was a way to prod people gently and give them a way to participate. Once they did, now they're
Hmm.
more engaged. So I think that was a great way to facilitate. Also, just the way that the program was laid out made that flow more natural. It was more of a natural dialogue than a forced dialogue, if that makes sense.
It does. So this question kind of parlays into that. So
Mm-hmm.
talk maybe a little bit about the tools that Higher Echelon used that helped kind of facilitate, or that folks were able to take away with and use on their own, especially because when you're dealing with stress management, a facilitated session is great to kind of remove some of the pressure that's happening with the team up to a
Yep.
point, but that's an ongoing battle that has to occur. And I believe there were also some takeaways and some tools for folks to use on their own as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some great focus on tools, best practices. How do you deal with change? Kind of thinking through it. Understanding why change was difficult, but also what are some of the um, relief valves that you have in life to help with that. So pointing people to that, sharing the slide decks with the folks afterwards so that they could
Mhm.
take that away. They didn't have to take copious notes during the session. I think it was just the professional approach to say, we've heard you. And then the follow on, to the sessions were nice. They're giving us a nice dashboard of where they thought the team was, and then follow on recommendations on how we could support that. Part of that was those focus on you sessions around managing stress, but also how do we do a better job of communicate? How do we make sure we've got a good communication strategy, and then what's the schedule around that so we keep people informed? In the old adage, in the absence of information, people make stuff up, right? So, and that creates that whole water cooler talk that's not helpful for people.
Yep. No, that's very true. All right. Perfect. Well, Rick, that's great. That's really the biggest things I kind of was wanted you to maybe talk about, because I think this is a common theme with a lot of organizations that are out there. Just we're seeing more and more organizations going through constant churn, constant change. Uh, you know, we've been living through massive organizational kind of pair downs. We've heard the Microsofts, the Amazons of the world all doing
Mm-hmm.
that as well. So I know Phillips, had their moment as well. So it's again, this is something I think that resonates with a lot of organizations. I just want to hit a little bit of a wrap up. So a couple of things I heard you really highlight was, first off, having the environment and the opportunity of a neutral third party to create that safe space for your team seemed to really be one of the key effective elements as far as how that was done. It sounded like it was also combined with the right level of knowledgeable facilitation and expertise
Yeah.
to kind of help guide folks down that processes, and then complemented with tools to give something, to give the, we've all lived through sales training, the what's in it for me, helping
Mm-hmm.
folks understand the value on it, which will ultimately benefit the organization if the individuals are taken care of in a more solidified manner. Those are a couple of the big takeaways I had, but I want to turn it back over to you kind of for last word before we wrap up, and see if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
No, you hit the main points. I think the only thing I leave people with here is that, as we all know, and probably a lot of people have been through a lot of different change in their organizations. Change is constant. We know that, organizationally especially. But also, it's important to realize that, and I think statistically, 70% of change efforts fail. But why? And I think part of it is we're not communicating effectively. We're not listening appropriately to the concerns of the employees. And I think this third party vehicle gives us that opportunity to really um, gain trust with your employees, that you're making an investment in them during this difficult time. I think that's a reassuring piece, and frankly can get people back on track, and not, sitting on the sideline waiting for that next shoe to drop. Gives them focus on how they can control things today, even though they may not know what the end game is. They have control of today. I think that's an important thing that we took away from that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing kind of your thoughts and your experiences with Higher Echelon. I think this is going to resonate with a lot of folks out there, to kind of give them a little better chance to say, what this might look like and how they might be able to find another option that they can use that you've done to kind of resolve their issues that they're dealing with within their organization. So thank
Great.
you so much.
You're welcome, Rob. Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.